Quijano. A high-stakes summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un could be fast approaching. A potential meeting between the two leaders is being planned after reports that CIA Director and Secretary of State nominee Mike Pompeo met secretly with Kim Jong Un in North Korea over Easter weekend. The president discussed a potential summit during a joint news conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday. Major Garrett reports from Florida.
After 2 days of meetings with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the leaders held a press conference at the president's resort, Mar-a-Lago.
I will be meeting with Kim Jong Un in the coming weeks to discuss the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Hopefully that meeting will be a great success, and we're looking forward to it.
Over lunch, President Trump described CIA Director Mike Pompeo's recent secret trip to North Korea.
He just left North Korea, had a great meeting with Kim Jong Un, and got along with him really well, really great.
On Twitter, Mr. Trump said the face-to-face occurred last week. The White House later said it happened over Easter. Pompeo has taken the lead on outreach to North Korea, and the meeting was held to lay the groundwork for a summit between President Trump and Kim Jong Un sometime in the coming months. 5 locations, all outside the U.S., are being considered, but it is unclear how far Kim is willing to travel given that North Korea lacks reliable aircraft to fly long distances.
I'm working hard to get every senator that vote that I can.
Pompeo is the president's Secretary of State nominee and is facing a confirmation battle in the Senate.
Mike will be in good shape. We'll see what happens. You know, a lot of people are predicting other things, but I have a feeling it's going to work out very well.
Kentucky's Rand Paul, a key vote to getting the nomination out of committee, has already announced his opposition. The president called Paul today and urged him to meet with Pompeo.
At this point, it would take a great deal to move me, but out of respect for the president, I'm going to meet with him.
Let's go now to our CBS News chief White House correspondent who was in the room there during that news conference, joining us from the president's resort there at Mar-a-Lago. Major, what's your take?
Couple of things. Clearly, the president wants this momentum for a summit with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un to continue, and he wants it to come to fruition. But his words near the end saying, if we don't think this meeting is going to be fruitful, we're not going to attend, or if in the middle of it, I don't think it's working, I will get up and leave, underscores not only the president's perspective on this, but I would say a continuing, not emerging, but continuing degree of skepticism within the administration that this summit will actually occur, because so much has to be dealt with before these two leaders can have an agreement, not least of which, where are you going to do it? But then comes the what are you going to talk about? This president, President Trump, by applying maximum pressure, has made it clear he has no intention of talking about talking. This has to be a conversation about the methods and verification of denuclearizing North Korea. And if it's not, I don't understand, and this administration can't explain and really doesn't want to explain how this summit would occur. So those cautionary words from President Trump about maybe this not happening, I think is the most important part of this story as it has occurred today, because there's been this tremendous sense of, wow, there's going to be a summit and these two leaders, won't that be amazing? Well, it could be, and those certainly would be pictures for an entire era to look at and to evaluate. But the president saying out loud, may not happen, I think is by far the vital part of this story to focus on today.
Major, I want to turn to your reporting on CIA Director Mike Pompeo. What do we know about why Pompeo was chosen to lead talks with Kim Jong Un, and how could this affect his potential confirmation as Secretary of State?
Well, a couple of things. Historically, when there have been back-channel communications with the North Koreans, the United States intelligence community has been very much a part of that. So was the State Department, but the intelligence community often in the lead. Mike Pompeo is among the most highly regarded members of the Trump cabinet. As CIA director, he always personally gave the president his daily intelligence brief. So they have a very strong rapport. And the president wanted to send a signal to the North Korean regime. He was sending one of his most trusted advisors to engage Kim Jong Un directly. When Mark Landner of the New York Times today asked the president, can you give us any sense of what came of that, or why don't we have a sense that the United States really learned anything or gained anything from sending such a high-level trusted advisor to North Korea, the president didn't really have an answer. And that suggests that maybe, though they met, not much was achieved, or not as much as the United States hoped. Secondly, and this is a side issue on Pompeo, but I think it's important, Elaine, and I'll get back to his Senate confirmation process in a second. Mark Landner of the New York Times also asked the president if North Korea's release of 3 Americans held in their captivity is a precondition for a meeting with Kim Jong Un, meaning if they're not released, there won't be a summit. The president didn't answer that. That's something to keep an eye on. Back to the Senate confirmation. It's a close vote. The president and the Senate Republican leadership believes Pompeo will in the end get the votes, but it will be close and it will be a grind to get those votes. And the president's now focused on that in ways he wasn't a week ago, because he's now heard that it may be very, very close. The Pompeo mission and revelations that it occurred coming in this context is meant to underscore to Republicans in the Senate, this is really important. It's not just a vote for a future Secretary of State. It's a vote for someone who is an interlocutor with the North Koreans on the topic of denuclearization. So that is definitely increasing the visibility, and from the administration's perspective, the importance of confirming Mike Pompeo as the next Secretary of State.
Major, the term denuclearization, do we know, is there an agreed upon definition of what exactly that looks like from both the United States perspective and the North Korean perspective?
Well, based on what was said here and what's been said in the past, it means permanent, complete, and verifiable removal of existing nuclear weapons and the means by which to create them in the future, which essentially means North Korea would have to concede everything that it has achieved that's made itself a relevant factor on the world stage. In exchange for what? Nobody knows. But according to the definition established by this administration, that means everything out. The weapons and the means by which to develop them. Tangentially, there's also a conversation about ballistic missile technology, either eroding that or possibly dismantling that. In other words, the North Koreans would have to give up almost everything. It would almost have to be a complete tactical surrender of their nuclear program, which they have invested in at the expense of almost everything else in North Korean society. So this underscores how difficult a set of negotiations lay ahead for this administration as it pursues how it has defined denuclearization. And just to put a finer point on it, Elaine, the Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, used exactly the same phrases and exactly the same words. Complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. That means everything, as it's currently defined. Subject to negotiation, of course, but when it comes to nuclear weapons and the means by which to deliver them, this administration has driven a pretty hard line. There's no fudging that, or there's no negotiating around what is or what isn't. So that's where we are.
All right, Major Garrett with the president in Florida for us. Major, thanks very much.
Of course.